Odysseus comes back. He goes through the scene in which she recognizes him. And they then come to the scene where they're alone. And they form a plan to eliminate all the suitors. Except that Penelope says, well, actually there's one suitor that I'd appreciate it if you didn't kill.
That cute one in the corner.
What does Odysseus say there? Here, Nick, you're Odysseus.
He's definitely the one you'd want to kill most.
It would change the whole story, right? It would change his whole, like, it would just shatter his world. The whole time he's, like, hoping to come home to his wonderful wife, his faithful bride, and if that actually wasn't the case, then it was all for naught. He should have just stayed with Calypso or the other princess, Nausicaa. But I don't know. I mean, either that or you just try to win her back.
Well, she's bad. She loves you. I mean, you were away for 20 years. I wove lines tapestry. I did a lot of stuff, but you know, the fact is that
We both screwed around.
yeah, it's like it was, and it wasn't just screwing around. No, this is a real affection. I formed a bond while you were away. It's not in any way oppositional to you. I'm thrilled that you're back. I'm not planning to leave you. I'm just asking you, don't kill this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. We did both screw around.
What do you think, Nick? The other Nick?
I think that Odysseus is creative enough that he could find a way to satisfy Penelope's wishes here and also derive some sort of, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly. I think there are a lot of like 1940s Hollywood movies based on the same premise. There's a variety of like romantic comedies that involve remarriage of one kind or another, where you sort of have to. I guess there's a lot of like I love Cary Grant movies. There's one movie called The Lady Eve, The Awful Truth, Bring Up Baby. These all sort of involve situations where there was a couple at the beginning of the movie, then they broke up for one reason or another. Both man and woman went around gallivanting and sleeping with other people, and towards the second half of the movie this is their reconciliation. It often involves disguises too, which is really interesting. Maybe they're derivative works of Odysseus and of the Odyssey in one way or another. For instance, in The Lady Eve, the woman disguises herself as a British baroness of some kind, and that's the way that she wins her way back into the man's heart, through this disguise. So I think that
Well, what happens when she wins her way back in?
I think they recognize that they, much like Odysseus and Penelope, that they have a certain very cynical worldview, maybe which involves a lot of lies and storytelling, which they share and which only they can engage in the same way. And they do get back together at the end.
But they're getting back together. Does that mean that the other relationship ends?
In all those movies, it does.
Yeah, they all do.
They all resolve. There's some of the other plots are things like, you think your husband's dead, he's not dead, you married, but he turns out to come back, and then there's the three in a bed, kind of that sort of imagery. But they all tend to resolve in a friendly. The other third guy is always, they still remain friends, but he's not allowed back.
They make him seem
Casablanca's like that.
Yeah, it's true.
No, of course.
They do make him seem like a chump in most cases. The suitor who Penelope still loves he's not let in on the inside jokes that they tell to each other, and I guess that's one way in which they more firmly establish their own bond, by excluding this would-be lover of Penelope.
Right, who's usually kind of stiff and proper and trying to be
this
polite.
Rock Bellamy actor.
Going to dinner with them. But you're absolutely right also that when Humphrey Bogart does it in Casablanca, he's the hero.
He's the hero.
It's obviously a completely real world problem. It's not that you can. Well, 50% of marriages end in divorce, so people have troubles. Some of which have to do, I'm sure, with infidelity. But even the ones that don't, infidelity is something that whenever they do surveys, they find it's rampant, and yet people get over it or accommodate it in various ways.
So does he love her any less for his infidelity throughout the
I would say not.
trial?
I would say it's clear he loves her, and I would say, it's clear she loves him. She risks everything for him at the end. They go to war together against incredible odds, risking their lives for each other. Because I think love is subtle and complicated, and the answers are not clear. How you work that situation out is not, to me, dictated in any. There's no one right answer.
I have a question about the hypothetical then. Is it that she wants to keep the suitor because she has some type of meaningful relationship with him?
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not just purely sexual
No. I mean, sex is a big part of it.
Just to make hypothetical good.
I don't know. I think there's something that's uncomfortable about the idea of a woman having a relationship with two men, simultaneously. I think that
Not more uncomfortable than a man.
yeah, more uncomfortable than a man doing the same thing. I think that's more, just the idea that a man who does that is a player and a woman who does that is a whore. That there's definitely that double standard. So I don't know. I don't know if.
Where do you think that standard came from?
Who knows? Who
You
knows?
know it came from men.
From men.
Came from Homer.
There you go. And I think Odysseus, I don't know. I don't think he could stand for that. I don't think he could stand for that. I don't think he could be content with that. That he's too aggressive, too, I don't know that he would be okay while she's with the suitor, knowing that he, if he's not with his other women or women, that he could sit at home and know that Penelope is now spending this quality time with the other suitor and not feel enraged, to talk about the rage of Achilles. That's what it comes to me, like that type of man would have to go out and kill someone or so, couldn't deal with that.
Well, I think an important consideration in this is that in the hypothetical, Penelope has had a meaningful relationship plus sex, whereas Odysseus has just been having this strange, exotic time with the goddess in which he was at every point supposedly was wanting to leave.
Which is better, which is more compelling.
Well, what I think is that when it comes to his decision that we're saying in this hypothetical is that when he's coming back, I think there's a big difference between if she just had a sexual relationship and if she had a meaningful one in the context of the way their relationship is presented in the book. I think if she's just had a fling with one of the suitors, he's maybe not so likely to get enraged about it as compared to if she has been like, okay, I want you to spare this guy. We have developed something special between us while you've been gone. Yes, I still love you and I want to be together again now that you're back, but I still have something special with this guy. I think Odysseus has a much bigger problem with that than just a purely sexual relationship, because the whole thing that he's coming back to that's kept them alive is they have this romance that is kind of separate from that, and that if she's been substituting that part of it, that's I think where he has the problem.
I think the structure of the story is that these two people, uphold their vows to each other, and they don't betray each other. And it's hard to see exactly because the terms of the vows are different for each person. So, in other words, I guess Odysseus' promises that he would come back, and he did. And Penelope's promises that she would stay true, and she did, and so they come together. So I guess you just have to ask the question with the hypothetical: what are the terms of the promise? Was the promise not to fall in love with somebody else? Was it not to marry somebody else? Was it not to have sex with somebody else? Was it not to like it? So
I'll do it, but I won't like it.
well, as you were saying about
Wasn't any.
Calypso, he sort of supposedly wants to leave the whole time. So And I tend to agree with Abby.
I feel terrible about it, Odysseus. I really feel terrible about it. I didn't realize this was going to happen.
See,
but when it happened, it just happened. I can talk to you about promises and contracts and things like that, but this is the reality that I'm presenting you.
I think that just even your feelings of guilt indicate that you know it's a betrayal. And it's kind of like what Abby was saying. I think that it would be viewed as a betrayal. I think by the terms of their relationship, it would so alter the story as to be unrecognizable.
That's an extremely acute understanding that their vows were different. And that's very, very interesting to me. The question I would ask subsidiary to that is, but should their vows have been different? I mean, if you're coming at it, let's say this makes a better story in some sense, but that makes a harder problem and a more real life problem. And should the vows have been equal? I mean, if I believe that he's not romantic about Penelope, but that he's feeling her strength, and when he comes back and she presents him with something that calls for him to now show great strength, what's he going to do? The cowardly thing to me is for him to say off with his head. How do you kill someone that the person you supposedly love more than anything in the world loves? You wouldn't kill that person if it were her child or even her dog. So now you're talking about a human being that she loves. I don't get it. I mean, I don't see how you can take the step to say that guy goes.
Well, I think he'd have to love her more than he loves himself.
Maybe
because
that,
I think that in that situation, you're thinking, I want this person to be happy, and to know what that would do to them. For me to do this would be the ultimate betrayal, maybe.
And if you think about it, let's say he doesn't. Kills the guy, right? You broke your vows, kills the guy. What is their relationship going to be like from then on? He's killed the relationship that he has with Penelope, hasn't he? Odysseus no longer has.
She killed it first.
Yeah, did she kill it by asking him to let this man stay? Because then I look at it the same way. If he agrees to do that, then maybe the relationship as they both understood it, or at least he understood it, is also gone.
Yeah.
And maybe the vows were just not to tell him about it. I mean, maybe it was, and they both are, well versed in deceit. Maybe she was supposed to, if this had happened, act like it hadn't, and sacrifice the guy.
God.
Whew. Thank God we weren't married in ancient Greece. Huh?
I'll get back into contract questions. That's good.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's so
Sacrifice the guy? You mean we'll just set up this bow thing and what I've got to do is
watch him watch him die with a straight face.
And not even warn him or try and let him escape, or.
Well, in other words, if you're Penelope, you're faced with these two choices. That's all I'm saying. Is that you're faced with either being with Odysseus or, not. I guess maybe you could try to escape with the guy or something. But yeah, if you chose option B, you definitely want to figure out a way for him not to kill him, because then you've lost everything. But the terms of the contract, I guess, if we're going to use that metaphor, dictate that you only have sort of two options, I think.
But isn't there a sense then that she's got a contract with the suitor, right? And that maybe the contract is, you're with me, but when he comes back, you're zero, you're nothing, you're gone? I mean, is that the flip side of that?
I think it has to be, because in the terms of, if we're sticking with contracts, the contract between Odysseus and Penelope is this exclusive thing where if she has broken that, then she has broken it, and that's, I suppose you can say that, yeah, if he doesn't know that she has done that, then that means that she has to make this choice of whether or not she lets him know. But that's why I think that, it's not necessarily two contracts, because again, Odysseus has had sex with this goddess, but in this hypothetical, she has formed a meaningful relationship. She's formed another contract in some way conflicting with their other contract, whereas maybe between them, the sexual part isn't as important as the developing of the relationship, because they're coming back after 20 years. It's this huge thing. It's this ideal of the way this other person is. Now maybe it's not necessarily all romance. Maybe a lot of it can be like the personal strength and everything. But I still think the context of it is tied into this thing they have between each other, and the forming a meaningful relationship, maybe overstepping the bounds in a different way. That if he finds out about it, then they say that she has transgressed beyond this, and if he knows, then there's not much you can do.
So it's so sad that the person who forms the meaningful relationship has done the evil.
Universe or whatever
And the person
has
who
definitely
just had
the bigger
meaningless
transgression.
sex did nothing wrong.
But see, I see it the exact opposite way. Like, this is an entirely different form of betrayal, giving into a sexual urge, and in some way replacing someone in this emotional manner. It seems to me like it is definitely, even though it's a positive thing, you know, okay, forming a meaningful relationship with another person is a positive thing taken in and of itself, but forming a meaningful relationship with a person, you know, in the same way that I think in most people, if they were married, they find out that their spouse has been cheating on them with someone, the spouse feels really bad about it, that I think that's an entirely different scenario than when you find out the spouse has been seeing someone in a romantic context and she says, I really love this person in a meaningful way. I think you're you feel much worse learning that your spouse has formed a love relationship in some way relatable to yours, this special thing that you have together, as opposed to someone who's just had sex with someone else. I see that as definitely, at least in the context of the original relationship, maybe not in the context of global.
Each emotion elicits a response, and what's missing is the reasoning that goes from one to the other. And I mean, to tie it into the sort of the title of this class, you could say that emotion is a short-circuiting of reason, at least in the sense of rage and anger, jealousy, and the kind of emotions that are prevalent in the Odyssey and in the Iliad. And to have had this thoughtful debate, whether it's an internal monologue or a conversation between Penelope and Odysseus, would be a monumental thing. You know, what is best for her, what's best for me, what's the long-term consequences? You know, that's a very different thing than, okay, I'm angry, I'll kill him. I'm going to kill the maids, and I'm going to kill the, what is it, like the grain person, the miller that provided, you know, I'm going to kill everybody.
It's quite a shocking part of the Odyssey that they go and actually kill a bunch of people who probably did nothing wrong. There are a couple of maids who seem to have colluded with the suitors. Aside from those, they just kill a bunch of innocent people. That is quite shocking, isn't it?
Hang them up on clotheslines, from
Hang 'em
all I
up,
can
yeah.
gather, right? I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
And then they clean it all up, and it's all neat and tidy, and then they live happily ever after. That's
The
it.
thing that, well, they don't live happily ever after, number one. They die. He says, the last chapter is, you know, we're going to get old and dead, which is really kind of interesting and down. But the two things that I find missing in it, you know, I guess, what can you expect? It's Homer, he's writing in Greece and not now, but I find that there's no sex in this book. They keep telling, every time you get to the juicy parts where you want to know why he's with Calypso and what was so great about it, he doesn't tell you, which is really interesting. And he doesn't tell you what happens on in the night between Odysseus and Penelope when they tell each other the stories. And if he really tells his stories, she's then faced with the problem that Charlie poses of the hypothetical, the other.
How does she feel
From
about
Oh,
the
it?
see,
other
I
side.
disagree because to me again it's the asymmetrical vows. So he never promised not to go and sleep with a witch for a period of time.
Well, okay, but 8 years worth? I mean, if I'm Penelope, I say, yeah, fine, but you know, you dragged it out a bit too long here. I was weaving all
Stopping
of
in port cities on the way home.
Yeah, and not only that, but after, it's again, like, it's just very, very flippantly mentioned in a few words, but after Calypso and Odysseus make their final decision that Odysseus is leaving, you know, they set all this stuff up, they get the raft ready and everything, and then they go have one last night of sex, and then he leaves the next morning.
That's right.
That's such an interesting part of this. And why does he do that? I have my idea.
And I just thought it was interesting because it seems like, I don't know, like, I guess there was nothing in it about it, but it almost seems to me like, okay, he's been there this whole time, you say, he's been under the spell from Calypso, so it's like, that's just why this is happening and so forth. But I don't know, it just almost seems like when they make this decision, it's almost like the spell is broken, but you still then have them having this last night's sex. It just seemed to me like that one night was so much worse than like the entire like 7 or 8 years before.
Except, why do you think he slept with her that last night? Why did he do it?
Because breakup sex is the best.
Yeah, number one. That's it.